The first lesson in interstellar governance: never assume the official records tell the truth. That was something my progenitor mother used to say, and like most wisdom from one's progenitor mother, I ignored it, until the day it nearly killed me. "Contact alert, Captain Rin," barked Sensor Officer Vesh, his four eyelids blinking in rapid sequence. "Unknown craft approaching from Outer Arc Sector 12. I groaned, lowering my steaming cup of Cavroot infusion onto the command rail. "Just once," I muttered. "I'd like to finish a drink before the universe remembers I exist." The Union frigate Iron Diligence had been sweeping this supposedly barren corridor for 4 standard years. No pirates, no anomalies, no mystery. Until now. "Classification?" I asked, straightening my dorsal fins as I rose. The command chair, manufactured for Mir-class officers, wasn't designed for Threnian spines. Budget cuts meant surplus furniture, and my vertebrae protested. Vesh's digits darted over his panel. "That's the issue, Captain. The configuration doesn't match any known hull in our archives. It's refusing standard hails." The forward display flickered, resolving into the intruder. Sleek, with jutting structures that might have been weapons, or something worse. Its motion through the starfield was deliberate, predatory, as if it understood how we watched it. "Assessment hostile?" I asked. Science Chief Lyra, a willowy Solari with iridescent fur and triangular ears, turned from her station. "Inconclusive, but they're transmitting on a comband we abandoned nearly 800 cycles ago." "Put it through," I ordered. The bridge filled with a rush of syllables, sharp, rhythmic, with tonal whiplash that made my secondary heart pound. Lyra's fingers swept over her controls. "Running historical comparison. This may take time. Our data from this sector is fragmentary." "Fragmentary?" I arched a brow ridge. "The central archives are supposed to be exhaustive." Communications Ensign Kale, barely out of academy, cleared his throat. "Captain, there's a notation in the deep vault. This sector's records were purged about 260 cycles ago by direct order of the High Assembly." That got my attention. The Assembly rarely touched archival matters unless something dangerous was being buried. "I have a partial match." Lyra's ears quivered with either excitement or dread. "The language. Captain, it's human." The bridge went still. "Impossible," I said flatly. "Humans are myths, bedtime monsters for unruly hatchlings." "The match is conclusive," Lyra insisted, "and I've uncovered fragments, improperly purged. Humans existed, originated here, and they were quarantined." "Why?" I demanded. Before she could answer, Vesh stiffened. "Energy spiked from the unknown vessel off the scale. Shields," I began, but the ship fired before we could act. The beam halted just shy of our hull, shaping itself into a shimmering sphere between our vessels. Within it, a biped, nearly hairless except for the crown, 2 forward-facing eyes, skin without scales or plates, limbs in a peculiar symmetrical arrangement. "Attention, unknown vessel," the being said, the words perfectly synced with our translators. "This is Captain Elias Carter of the Earth Expeditionary Craft Dawnseeker. We come in peace and seek formal contact." My scales tightened. "A human," I whispered. "Confirmed," Lyra breathed. "And according to the fragments I've recovered, the Assembly feared them, enough to erase every trace." I stared at the projection. It smiled, showing blunt, flat teeth, and my instincts whispered predator. Kyle's voice trembled. "The archives say humans expanded at alarming speed, innovated constantly, and, when threatened, burned entire worlds." "Exaggeration," I said, though the laugh in my throat felt hollow. Lyra's gaze was fixed on the human. "Captain, the records also claim the Assembly tried to eliminate them entirely." My fins stiffened. "Eradication?" "Coordinated strikes on their homeworld and colonies. Declared total success, 260 cycles ago." I pointed to the image. "Then what is that?" "Either the archives are wrong," Lyra said softly, "or they survived a genocide by the galaxy's strongest political power." The human's voice came again, calm but edged. Commanding Officer of Iron Diligence, we detect your sensor focus. Our intent remains peaceful. Please respond. I drew a breath and nodded to Kyle. Open a channel. Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Rinn of the Union frigate Iron Diligence, I said. Your presence is unexpected. The human's face arranged itself into that unsettling expression, a smile. I imagine it would be, Captain Rinn. Your assembly tried to erase us 2.5 centuries ago. My secondary heart skipped 3 beats. You remember that? He gave a little laugh, musical but with an iron filament running through it. We built our civilization around remembering that. You'll find we've learned a few things since, but as stated, we seek dialogue. Protocol requires first contact occur on Union territory, I managed. We invite you aboard to... With respect, Carter said. We'd prefer you visit us. Bring a small delegation. We've prepared accommodations. Vesh tilted his head toward me and whispered, Captain, that's irregular and unsafe. He was right. It was both. But the old rules felt brittle in my hands, like sun-dried shell. They clearly knew more about us than we did about them, and information flowed toward gravity. Very well, I said. We accept. Carter nodded. Transmitting docking pattern now. Welcome aboard the Dawn Seeker, Captain Rinn. The image winked out. I turned to my officers. Lyra, keep tearing open those purged fragments. I want everything the assembly tried to bury. Kale, encrypt a packet to command, full telemetry. Vesh, map their hull down to the microlattice. I want no surprises. I'll lead the delegation with Lyra and Kale. Vesh, you have command. If we don't return within 3 standard hours, take the ship and run. Tell the Union what you can. Lyra hesitated. Captain, the fragments mention humans and combustion. I'm aware. No, she said quietly. I mean their affinity for it, not fear, use. They built a civilization around controlled burn, from chemical engines to fusion to... She searched for a word in our tongue. To caged stars. A cold ripple went through my scales. Among my people, flame was a mythic terror. We engineered our industry around cold reactions, quiet currents, obedient fields. The idea of a species that held heat close on purpose. All the more reason to go, I said. Prepare the shuttle. The transit to the human ship passed under a taut silence. Lyra, head down over a slate of recovered fragments, whispered updates that made my spine itch. The assembly's strike had shattered their home, Earth, and several large colonies. But humanity, it seemed, had already thrown seeds further than our sensors had ever looked. Generation arcs with spinning habitats, cities bored into comets, deep vaults in shadowed craters. They adapted by scattering, Lyra said, fragmenting, then weaving back together. And in the cycles since, I asked, the archive ends with mission accomplished. After that, nothing that wasn't erased. Kyle, unusually quiet, lifted his slate. Captain, you should see this. A hollow bloomed, a planet, once blue and green, now a charcoal sphere. The caption in a dead metadata scheme. Ilanis Prime. Sanction response. What happened? I asked, though I already knew. A minor power struck a human outpost, Kyle said. The response was heat. They burned an ocean to air. After that, the assembly labeled them non-convergent and moved for eradication. I closed my hands until the joints ached. We will not repeat the assembly's sin, I said, unsure whether I meant it as promise or warning. The Dawn Seeker swallowed our shuttle into a quiet bay. Air analysis, close to ours, deliberately tuned. As the lock cycled open, I tasted a faint mineral tang and a hint of warmth that wasn't ours. Captain Carter awaited us with 2 companions, a tall, watchful security officer with dark skin and scarred knuckles, and a compact specialist whose eyes held the bright, patient light of a scholar. Captain Rinn, Carter said, extending a limb. Humans called it a handshake. I inclined my head. I'd read the gesture, but taking that warm, textured hand still felt like stepping into history. Rinn, I said. Science Chief Lyra. Communications Ensign Kyle. Dr. Mina Osei, the scholar said. Xenoecology. Lieutenant Sawyers, said the watchful one. Please, Carter said. This way. Their corridors were wide, lit bright, their hull quiet as sleeping stone. And there, along the walls at intervals, burned tiny, contained flames. Not the soft glow of LEDs, actual tongues of fire in transparent wells, flickering. My fins rose despite myself. You decorate with combustion. Carter glanced back, that same small arc to his mouth. Fire is a story we carry. It kept us alive on a hostile cradle world. The first art humans made was in firelight. We learned to soften ore, harden clay, sterilize food, push ships. You could say we are shaped by what burns. Lyra watched the little flames, fascinated and cautious. You are not afraid of it. Fear keeps you alive, Carter said. Understanding lets you live. We reached a conference room fitted with chairs that adjusted shapes when we sat. Her table extruded from the floor, surface changing texture to accommodate Lyra's fur and my scales. So, Carter said, palms on the table, you're wondering how we survived. Our records claim you didn't, I said. From one vantage, that's true, he replied almost gently. Earth died, 11 billion of us with it. We mourned them until grief became climate, but we weren't all there when the hammer fell. We rarely are entirely anywhere. Dr. Osei leaned in, voice even. Your assembly misread our ecology. Most Union civilizations grew on stable, predictable worlds. Earth was beautiful and cruel in equal measure. Quake-prone, storm-swept, disease-riddled, occasionally caught by ice. We evolved expecting disaster. Adaptation isn't an event for us, it's a habit. Sawyers spoke for the first time. His voice was gravel. You also stagnated. No offense. Your union hasn't leaped in 400 cycles. You sand down corners, you standardize, you regulate curiosity into forms. We didn't have that luxury. We value reliability, I said, my fins flaring. Carter inclined his head. Stability is a virtue, but when the floor collapses, dancing carefully is still falling. He slid a data prism toward me. History, science, culture, evidence we exist, and a formal request to open channels. Why? I asked. Why reach for us, after what the assembly did? Carter's eyes softened. Because isolation calcifies, because community is a human need, because there are storms coming we won't weather alone. Storms? Lyra asked. Sawyers tapped his wrist. The room lights dimmed, and a star chart bloomed in ghost blue lines, arcs of motion traced across it like inspecting fingers. Dr. Osei spoke. We call them the Gleaners, part machine, part living tissue. They enter systems at the edges, invisible to sensors like yours, which bias to coherent emissions. The Gleaners hum between bands like heat mirages in vacuum. They don't speak, they don't answer. They harvest matter and arrangement indiscriminately. Ore, atmosphere, cities, biomes. They reformat it into more of themselves. A muscle jumped in Cale's jaw. How long? 70 cycles since first contact with our exiles, Carter said. They push along cold routes, threading sparsely populated corridors. We've held them mostly, but their scouts have turned toward your frontier. Your systems will never see them until their tools chew the dark, and your weapon won't matter much. If you invented them to force an alliance, I said, this would be a tidy story. True, Carter said, but we didn't. And if we wanted to break you, you wouldn't have seen us until something bright and final. We're here because we don't want to live like ghosts anymore. Before I could answer, his wrist device chimed. He touched it. Bridge. A disembodied voice. Captain, we're picking up phase distortion at the boundary. Pattern matches Gleaner scout behavior. Carter's face stilled, all warmth banked. Understood. Set alert. Spin up the veil. Captain Rin, if you'd like to observe, you're welcome. If you'd rather return to your ship, we understand. I surprised myself. We'll observe. Then let's keep you somewhere safe while we do something dangerous, he said, rising. The Dawnseeker's bridge was a bowl, consoles stacked in rings around a central platform. No barriers, no raised dais. Everyone could see everyone. The display showed the starfield. At its edge, space pinched, shimmered, like hot air over rock. Veil density at 91%, called a technician. Flux anchors stable. Lattice hum nominal. Scout is phasing in, someone else said. Mass estimates lean high for a single unit. I expected a gleaming predator. What arrived looked wrong. Asymmetrical plates stitched over muscle that wasn't muscle, a carapace of slag and bone. Light died across its surface, like thought swallowed whole. "Hail?" Carter asked, out of habit rather than hope. No response. "Target appendage clusters and navigational spines," he said. "Make it hurt without teaching it anything it can use." The Dawnseeker fired, not with the bright spears I knew, but with threads, knife-thin beams that slipped through our idea of shielding as if it were wet cloth. A shimmer flared around the Gleaner, then died. Chunks of it sloughed off and re-knit in seconds from dust. "They bootstrapped themselves from scrap," Dr. Osei said softly beside me. "Entropy as diet." "Again," Carter said. Coherent pulses stitched a lattice around the thing, and for a breath it held. Then the creature flexed, and reality where the net touched it flowed like wax. "Adjust phasing," Carter said quietly. "Cycle through the dead bands. Keep it guessing." The air tasted of heat. Not in temperature, the bridge was cool, but in intent, like a forge beneath stone. "Captain," said Sawyers, calm and terrible, "we've got seconds before it gets curious. It's starting to copy the lattice math." Carter's jaw clicked shut. "Arm the forge burst." A quiet fell that felt like a held breath. "The what?" I asked, not meaning to ask aloud. Lyra's fur prickled. "Something we don't have." "It's a controlled starseed," Dr. Osei said, eyes on the display. "A caged reaction. We grew it. We don't use it lightly." "Forge burst hot," the weapons officer reported, "targeting locked to its stress crest." Carter glanced at me as if remembering we were there. "You'll want to look away," he said. I didn't. "Release," Carter ordered. A small object slid into the dark, too simple to matter, until it struck the Gleaner's knotted surface and bloomed into a pale, furious sphere. It wasn't light in any spectrum, I knew. It was decision. Matter learned a new rule and complied all at once. When sight returned, the Gleaner was gone, a drizzle of bright dust shining like new snow on the void. "Damage sweep?" Carter said. "Minor scarring on the veil. No penetrations," someone answered. The bridge did not cheer. They simply moved on, like artisans finishing a difficult cut. "That," Carter said to me, "was a scout. Scouts travel in webs. Where there's one, there are more. And scouts report before they die." My voice scraped. I tried again. "Your weapon is a horror." "So are they," he said evenly. "We tried gentler tools first. They tried eating our gentler tools." Lyra swallowed. "How long before the others arrive?" "Days, if we're lucky," Dr. Osei said. "Hours, if we're not. They move on curves time didn't teach us." Carter turned the table prism toward me again. "This holds the math to modify your sensor suites, to see the gaps the Gleaners ride. Guidance on reshaping your shields so they don't rip when the Gleaners tug at their edges. And a few things we invented that your engineers can reproduce safely. Whether the Union wants to admit we exist or not, this may save millions." I didn't reach for it. "Do you want tribute, territory, redress?" "We want neighbors," Carter said. "Preferably alive ones and something else." "What?" Cale asked, voice small. "A conversation with your assembly," Carter said. "Because we think the Gleaners are related to a project your founders started and lost control of. Not your fault, not your generation's fault, but the truth went into the purge along with our name." Sawyers added almost gently, "Your myths about origin, civilizers from beyond, gifts that ended your last dark age. We've seen patterns that say those civilizers weren't gods. They were engineers. And when they vanished, they left behind machines meant to optimize biospheres, machines that forgot why and remembered only how." "Speculation," I said, clinging to the word like a handle in a storm. "Evidence-backed speculation," Dr. Osei said. "The Gleaners' metabolic logic is conservation run amok. They preserve order by erasing difference. Life is inefficient by their standard, so they cure it." I finally took the prism. It was pleasantly warm. "My protocol is clear. I report exactly what I saw, but what I saw will crack the Union like poor glass." Carter lifted his hands, palms open. We can't decide your politics. We can only be honest about our past and about the future rushing at all of us. The ship's alert washed the room in a heartbeat of amber. Additional phase points at the boundary, a voice called. Nothing inbound yet. They're tasting the veil. Then we're done, Carter said. Lieutenant Sawyers will escort you to your shuttle. Captain Rinn, if you come back, we'll be here. If you don't, we'll understand. Sawyers walked us back through the bright corridors. We passed another of those quiet flames. Lyra paused, drawn, and the human looked at it with a softness that startled me. You keep heat as a companion, she said. We keep memory, Sawyers answered. Heat is what change feels like. At the lock, he leaned closer, voice low enough to almost be kindness. There's something Carter didn't say. We think the Assembly's purge wasn't only about fear of us. It was fear of what we'd find if we kept digging. That the story about your founders saving you is missing the part where their machines broke you first. Dangerous words, I said. Truth usually is. Safe journey, Captain. Bring company next time. Back on the Iron Diligence, I shut myself in my quarters with the prism and the thin air of a choice. Union protocol demanded a pure account. Every frame, every pulse, every syllable. The Assembly would read it as a threat. Some within the Union would call for a new purge. This time to finish what the last one hadn't. Others would panic or pretend the Gleaners were a human trick. I turned the prism in my claws, felt the faint warmth pooling in its facets. We had drifted for cycles in careful circles. We kept things cool, tidy, predictable. Maybe we did it because cold feels safe. Maybe we did it because we forgot how to be brave. I slotted the prism into my console. Data unfolded. Star maps annotated in a hand that looked like stitches. Sensor algorithms that taught our arrays to listen to the quiet between frequencies. Defensive geometries that bent instead of shattering. Histories not just of wars, but of songs and families and food cooked over orange glow. And there, nested like an ember, a letter addressed to whoever opened it. We aren't the monsters you were told we were, it read. We're what happens when a species refuses to die. We can be cruel. We try not to be. We learned that heat can temper as well as destroy. If you want to stand with us, we'll stand with you. If you don't, we'll stand anyway, but we'd rather not stand alone. I sent the encrypted packet to command with full telemetry and added an addendum in my own voice. The official story is broken. The truth is on my desk, alive and inconvenient. The Gleaners are real, humans are real. We can either let our fear keep us cold, or we can learn to hold a little heat without burning the house down. I sat there for a long time listening to the ship's quiet breaths through the hull. Out past the veil, something old and hungry was adjusting its aim. Closer in, something older and human was lighting small fires in the dark. Perhaps that was the difference that frightened us most. Not that they played with flame, but that they understood what flame could do besides consume. It could purify metal. It could keep a child alive through a night of snow. It could be a signal. I finished my kavroot, now lukewarm and bitter. When I stood, my chair complained, and my spine did too. Get used to it, I told them both. Change is uncomfortable. I keyed the ship wide. Bridge, this is Rinn. Plot a return to Union space at best possible speed. Keep our veil tuned to the bands in file package Gamma 7. If anything pinches the dark, I want to see it before it sees us. Aye, Captain, Vesh replied. I cut the channel, fingers resting on the console's warm edge where the prism sat, still and patient. Whatever came next, the map had shifted. Humanity had stepped from the dark, with heat cupped in both hands, offering it not as a weapon first, but as a way through the cold. The universe shivered, and somewhere in that shiver I felt a spark take.